Hello and welcome to the video. In this video I'm going to show you quite a wacky mix in OpenTX. Now we have an entire set of tricks and tips if you're setting up models and mixes, because OpenTX is pretty powerful and can do pretty much anything. So go and have a look in the OpenTX Mix School if you're interested in finding out more and how to do stuff in OpenTX on your Tyrannus, your X10, your Horus, your QX7, your X7S, or whatever radio it is powered by OpenTX. Now this one is for Jim. Now Jim wanted something really wacky, and I've got to admit this is probably the hardest question I've ever had. It took me ages to figure this out. But once I show you the solution, it'll look really straightforward. And that's usually the way, with the elegant way that OpenTX does stuff. So what Jim wants to do is he wants to be able to have his throttle disabled and use SF as the switch to enable or disable it. But the extra little wrinkle that Jim wants is he doesn't want to be able to accidentally hit SF and disable his throttle in flight. He wants to be able to confirm the arm or disarm position of SF with a momentary pull of the SH switch, which is the momentary switch. So let me just show you what's happening here. So here's the throttle moving around. We have a value of -100. It's completely disabled. So if we move the switch into the arm position and briefly move the momentary switch, you see now we have throttle. If however I put the SF back to the disarm position and again briefly hit SH, then the throttle is disabled. Similarly, if I move switch back to the arm position, still don't have a throttle until I flick that momentary switch, and then we're in business again. And similarly you can disable it. So you have to flick SH to confirm the position of SF. Now this was a pig. So let me just show you how I've done it. Now the clue is we're actually using global variables and logical switches. So before I show you how I've got set it up, watch what's happening over here. So at the moment we have the throttle turned off. All the global variables are 0. And we have this latched 0 for logical switch. So let me just turn on SF. So there we go. So now we have a throttle that works. Interestingly, the global variable has gone to a value of 1 and everything's tickety-boo. I can move the arming switch around and it's not going to go off until I turn the SF to the disarm position and briefly switch SH. This time the global value goes to 0 and one of these logical switches comes on. And that's actually the one that's enabling or disabling the throttle. Let me just show you how I got this thing to work. So there's a couple of things that we're doing. Usually with really complex stuff you end up using logical switches and special functions, and we're going to use the fact that we can store the logical position of the throttle in a global variable, and then we can test with a logical switch what that position is, and then use that logical switch to then override the throttle. Now, let me go through that a little bit slower. So first of all, logical switch 1 is actually checking when both of the switches are in the forward position. That should be when we are arming the craft. Similarly, logical switch 3, I could have put it on any of them, it just happens to be this is how I ended up, because at one point I had lots of logic in here that was completely overwhelming me. Logical switch 3 is detecting when the switches are in the other position, i.e. the momentary switch is forward but the arm switch is back. So if we simulate that, hopefully you'll see that as I try each of these switches in turn, you'll notice them go on briefly. So there we go, there's logical switch 1 came on, and if I do this, there's logical switch 3 coming on. So that's how that bit is working. Now what we're going to do is in special functions we're going to use those logical switches to adjust the value of a global variable. Now we're not going to increment or decrement or do those kind of things. What we're going to do is we're going to set two hard values. We're going to either set it to a 1 or a 0, and that's actually what we're going to then test with a logical switch. Logical switch 4 is going to test whether the global variable is 0, and then in special functions we're going to use that logical switch 4 to either override the channel if the throttle disable is turned on or not. So let me just show you that again. So here we are, move the throttle up. Throttle is disabled by default, that's how the radio starts up. To enable the throttle I've got to flick the arm switch and then hit the momentary switch, and we'll see that the momentary switch will start. There we go. So we got 0, 1 has been detected. Global variable goes to 1. And now we have a throttle. If I put SF back to the back position, hit the momentary switch again, this time logical switch 3 comes on, reduces the global variable back to 0. This time, because the global variable is 0, logical switch 4 comes on, and logical switch 4's job is in special functions to override the throttle channel with a value of -100. So hopefully that helps those of you that really struggle with things like this. Jim, hopefully that answers the question. I hopefully have sorted that one out for you, so you can now implement it in your radio and you won't accidentally catch the throttle active switch and have a crash. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video, and particularly for watching right to the very end. We try and release a video on Tuesday and Friday, and sometimes we'll release 1 or 2 extra ones in a week as well. All of the videos on the channel are organised into easy to use playlists, so do have a look in there, because if you're interested in a subject, we organise all the videos on that subject so you can find them easily all together in one place. If you like what we're doing, then please like and subscribe and tell others about the channel so they can come and join as well. We're available in all of the usual social media places, particularly in places like Instagram, Twitter, and we also share all of our 3D designs on Thingiverse.